I hope he didn't lose his glasses, but if he did, he can borrow mine.
It's Yesil Makarjana, the funding member of Salesforce. That's you, sorry. I'll go start again. Avoyan Hovhannes, the founder of PixArt. Followed by Alex Chung, the founder of Giphy. And last but not least, Alexis Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit.
We can take our seat now. You have us another 55 minutes. So instead of my introducing the panelists, I thought that it would be best if they could very shortly introduce themselves. You already listened to Kim, so we will move to Hovhannes and have each panelist basically talk about their background for about a minute, minute and a half. Thank you. Hovhannes.
Thank you, Magdalena. I'm a founder of PixArt, and PixArt is my 5th company. I have other successful companies before PixArt. And before starting my companies, I was a PhD student. And back in the 90s, we were teaching computers to play chess. So I was early in AI. And surprisingly, I found a lot of things in common between science and entrepreneurship. You are selecting the problems you solve. You are doing a lot of experiments. You are failing. You are learning, and you are executing. So this experience was very instrumental for my future success as an entrepreneur. Now, PixArt is one of the top most downloaded apps in the world. And if 5 years ago I was dreaming about being the best photo editor on mobile, I think we are there now. So we are the most downloaded photo editor on mobile, and my next dream is to reach 1 billion people on PixArt.
That's a great dream. Alex?
Thanks for having me. Yerevan's been so nice to me and so welcoming. I really appreciate it. So I'm the founder of Giphy. If you've ever sent a GIF in your life, it's most likely coming from us. We are now, if you didn't, we'll talk about what we do, but we are now the 2nd largest search engine behind Google. We serve almost 1 billion people a day and about 10 billion blah, 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 blah. Before that, though, I was in a lot of you here are engineers. There's a good engineering crew here in Yerevan. So before that, I was an engineer. And after being an engineer for a while and not looking cool, I went back to art school, went to fashion school, then dropped out, and then went to 2 different art schools, got to New York. I actually went to Y Combinator with Alexis like 10 years ago.
Don't date us like that.
Okay, maybe
it was a minute ago.
It was a really, really long time ago. And I've been doing, this is my 12th startup. I've been doing this for the last 25 years.
Thank you. And now, Alexis Ohanian.
But says, hey y'all, there's probably a few Redditors out here. I started Reddit right out of school, right on. And actually, we sold it early. And then in 2010, I needed to get away from the Silicon Valley bubble. And I came here and lived in Armenia for 4 months. And that was my first trip here. And I was ashamed it took me that long, but I was grateful that I did. And in all the years that I keep coming back, I continue to be more impressed, more excited, more hyped. And yeah, very, very happy to be here. And thank you for being such warm recipients and hosts.
Well, all of you are multiple-time entrepreneurs. You've all started multiple companies. But what I would like to ask first is the current company that you've just started. Give me, if you wouldn't mind, and our audience, the origin story. Why are you doing what you're doing? Kim, in your case, it's your shapewear product.
Yes, I started a company called Skims, and it is shapewear and lingerie for all women. I wanted to be extremely inclusive. Usually shapewear, for me, the reason I wanted to start it was because there were a lot of styles out there that I had never seen before, and skin tone colors that didn't exist for even my skin tone. Usually shapewear comes in 1 or 2 colors, a really pale color and black. And so I would always take my shapewear and dye it with tea bags and try to get a skin tone a little bit similar to mine. So I launched Skims a few months ago with 9 different shades and completely seamless, which I hadn't seen before. So I basically like to take something that I am looking for, that I believe me and all my friends and sisters find as a necessity, and try to figure out how to make the best version of that.
Thank you very much. And Hovhannes, PixArt, you started how many years ago? Tell us the origin story of that.
We started, PixArt was live in 2011, and I was in the process of selling my previous company when I saw my daughter crying. And the reason she was crying, she was 10 years old, and she shared one of her drawings in one of the social networks and get very nasty comments, and she was completely shocked. So it was kind of like father feeling about like feeling a pain for your daughter. And I want to do something. I want to create something for people like her to be not only creative, but be also in a positive environment, to be surrounded by other people like her. And that's why all the philosophy of PixArt is, first of all, to lower the barriers of creativity, make it available to everyone. And second, to create a very welcoming community where people are sharing and enjoying to do art together.
Thank you. Sounds fantastic. So if you guys see a little girl crying next, you know where to direct that child. Alex, tell us, you're so many companies in your past. Tell us why you started Giphy.
So Giphy, just like Kim, was just a project I did for my friends, because there was no place to find gifts and send them to your friends. And Google actually hadn't done that at the time either. And it started from a weird philosophical conversation about language and how, we only have a couple words for love in every language. There's maybe one emoji, but there's a million different ways to express it. And there's no way to actually send or communicate all those different types of expressions to people. So we came up with this idea of an expression search engine, some way to catalog all of the human expression in the world, and then be able to take that from pop culture and media, and then be able to send it to your friends or family or anyone to express exactly what type of love or feelings that you have, that you're thinking that words just aren't available to do, especially across culture. My mom doesn't speak English, so trying to communicate like the crazy frustration she has in Korean to me is like very, very difficult. We ended up building this engine, and then the whole goal from the beginning was to see if could we compete with Google from search. And when we looked at Google actually only searches about 5% of all the possible words in the dictionary. But all of the other words about love, happy, hungry, excited, all of the words that are actually words about humanity are things that no one searches Google for. And we knew that there had to be a search engine that was really not organizing the world's information, but organizing the world's expression and culture. And that was the mission of the company. And now, now after 7 years, we're the second largest search engine. Right.
That's pretty
Google.
phenomenal. And I actually didn't know that, so thank you for sharing that. So Alexis, you've done a lot of things in your life, and you are choosing to do something very different this time around. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, it really was my experience with Reddit that helped guide why my co-founder Gary Tan and I created Initialized, which is an early stage venture capital firm. Basically, we were really lucky because in 2005, someone took a chance on a couple of college kids who didn't have any experience or any qualifications. The last thing basically I was preparing to be a lawyer, and I walked out of an LSAT to go get breakfast one morning and realized if I didn't want to take this really important test and instead would rather just get some waffles, I probably shouldn't be a lawyer. So I was pretty aimless at the time.
Early warning you had.
Yeah, I mean, it was fortuitous because it forced me to figure out, like, all right, what can I do? And I was a good enough programmer that I could start building. But I didn't have the credentials. I had no business experience whatsoever aside from working at a Pizza Hut in a parking garage. And so I got a $12,000 check that changed everything. And so the way we want Initialized to thrive is by being willing to have the courage to be the first investors in a company, even when it's just a couple of relatively underqualified founders, but who have big ambitions and have demonstrated ability to execute on them. And it's something I actually realized while I was on my paternity leave. I took 4 months off to just be a dad and do dad things. And frankly, during that time, I realized I wanted to have really good dinner table stories. Because at the time before that, I'd gotten back to Reddit to help lead the turnaround. But my work with a company now at like 450 people, which is still pales in comparison to the ones next to me, but even at that size wasn't about real work anymore. It was just about executive therapy sessions. And I wanted to get closer to solving real problems so that I could come home from work every day and not tell my daughter about, like, you know, navigating between helping a GC talk to our COO, but instead about the great entrepreneurs that I got to meet. And there's plenty right here in the audience, I'm sure.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Alex, you just said something that really struck me, and that is, if I heard you correctly, you said your mom doesn't really speak English. And one of the issues for the technology companies has been localization. You know, before, we had to localize our software to be able to reach the world. But now that we have moved to images, a lot more expressive images that tell stories, we actually have an opportunity to reach the world. Can you elaborate a little bit on this whole concept of your mom wanting to express her frustrations with you and the tools you created for her?
So I actually have most of my friends' moms now send me random gifts. And you'll get this random gift and you had no idea that they were that funny or they were that weird. And they will spend hours searching for this thing to represent themselves because they don't really have the words. My mom's a painter and she was educated, but when she moved here when she was 30 years old, to the United States, not Armenia, that would have been cool. Then I would be speaking Armenian. She didn't have the vocabulary of which to talk to people. And just even being able to say a few words. So everyone just kind of considered her to be, you know, a 10-year-old kid. And I remember when I moved here when I was 5, to the United States, that is, and learning English was really hard. And then what we're seeing is all of these people, the expressions they have, the ability, because cinema is pretty universal now. Like even Parasite now is a Korean film that's just won at Cannes. That 20 years ago would never have been the case, right? Korean cinema was like not even a thing. There wasn't enough distribution. So we're in an era now where the creative tools are available to anyone to create content. The distribution is available to everyone. And now what we're seeing is people can use this content to express themselves all over to each other. And that is something that my mom has never had access to. So, you know, every day we have hundreds of millions of people expressing different types of emotions to people all over the world. So I do think we're just starting, you know, the second thing that you ever say in a conversation after hello is, how are you? But to answer that in different languages is really difficult. Answering that from my mom's point of view, she has like 2 words to express that, even though there's a million different ways to do that. And now she has tools from a lot of what Pixar and other companies are doing to express what she's feeling.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I totally agree. I think that this whole concept of not being able to express emotion in words, you know, English is actually my 4th language. I started out with Armenian, Turkish, French, English, and I had those very same frustrations. You know, there are a lot of words that I just can't even find in English after, you know, knowing English for 45 years now. Hovhannes, you also are in the world of pictures. Tell us about how your user base actually uses PixArt to express emotion.
Right, so also I know like 3 languages, like a little bit less like you. I know Armenian, Russian, and English. But believe me, there are more countries in the world that understand these languages. And when you go to these countries when people didn't understand your language, what do you do? You use your body language. So it's when you need food, you say, I need food, right? And you want to check, you say, write a check, right? And everybody understands that because it's a very universal language. People use images and visual stories to communicate since like caves, ages, and we have in our DNA to communicate through images. What we do at Pixar, we really empower everyone to create a visual story. Making visual story is a very fundamental skill. It's kind of we have in our DNA to do that. When we are kids, we do lots of creativity, and we want to provide fun tools, not only just powerful tools, but fun tools for people to not only create, but also have fun with creating that and have a lot of practice and gamified experience versus going like 6-month courses on Photoshop, enjoy and do it for fun and learn skills, and then use this storytelling in your personal or business life.
Yeah, thank you. Kim, when we were doing the fireside chat, you talked about how important image is for your new product rollouts, for your products, and actually how personally you get involved with the image, with the logo, with the colors, etc. So you obviously agree with the panelists that, in fact, visual is really important. Has there been a visual that you really feel really made a big difference that you worked on? And if not, just tell us, how do you actually decide what visual to go with?
Well, I obviously, I think a huge part of my career has been image, and through social media apps, you know, I use PixArt, I use GIFs. I mean, I think if you're in the social media world and you have a brand that really is, especially my brand, relies a lot on me. So there is a lot of pressure to find the right expression to, you know, for me, in my case, let's talk about maybe Skims. I wanted the brand to be really known for inclusivity, and so to find the perfect photographer to capture the perfect emotion of what I wanted to say, that first time out to the world that I presented it on Instagram was really kind of your make it or break it. To me, I think the first impression is really important, and you have to really take the time to figure out what you want that brand to be. And like I said, my team's a really small team. It's about 4 or 5 people, and we come up with every idea really ourselves. We don't outsource any agency, so we understand that image is really everything, but we rely on inspiration from maybe GIFs that we see or edits that we see, or, you know, even like I was mentioning earlier, just traveling around the world to get different perspectives on images. So images are extremely important, and I take them extremely seriously. You know, when I post things on Instagram, I'm very mindful of what I post and what image it is, whether I, you know, use an app to express that, or, you know, an editing image app to express that. I think if you are very serious about your brand, you have to be extremely serious about the images that you put out.
Because we live in such a visual world these days. Alexis, now you are a venture capitalist investor, so you look at a lot of different companies. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think the next wave is going to be on image tools?
Well, agreeing with all the panelists here, we live in this visual age. I remember being a kid in grade school looking and learning about like Egyptian hieroglyphics and thinking like, how did they communicate all of that with just a few symbols? And now I see a GIF and it can tell an entire story, and an emoji can tell an entire story, and it's like, oh, okay, so this makes a lot more sense now. I really think we've reached a kind of sort of peak social And I think the reason we're seeing a proliferation of more community-driven apps is because we've all kind of reached a saturation point in a lot of ways. We're gonna look for networks. I mean, not unlike your daughter crying because of the commentaries she got. I think we've all now got social media ubiquity, and the platforms that get me most excited, the ones that I think are gonna grow the most in the next 10 years, are actually ones that give us a sense of community and a shared space for whatever that is, whether that's talking about our favorite sports team or creating art together. I think that's where all of this goes. And I do think the format is going to be very visual, whether it is images or moving images, video. That's absolutely where it's at. And don't even get me started, as 5G rolls out, that just becomes a no-brainer because we'll have so much bandwidth wherever we go for whatever videos or live content we want.
Thank you. Earlier in the fireside chat, Kim and I talked about growing a user base, growing a follower base. I wanted to hear from you guys as to what are some of the user acquisition strategies that you feel are going to actually make a difference going forward. As an investor, one of the worries that I used to have when I was a venture capitalist was I didn't want to invest in a company for all that money to go to Facebook and Google, right? I mean, I wanted to have my dollars that got invested to be used in a much more efficient way. So, yet we live with our user acquisition numbers, our monthly active users, etc. So what as an entrepreneur founder, what are your tools? What do you have, and what would you like to have to be able to grow your user base or your follower base?
Yeah. So as a startup, especially when you're on an early stage of your startup, acquiring first users are super important because later on you can learn, you can have data, you can optimize, but you need first users. And to get these first users, almost every startup I know, they use different growth hacking tactics. I can tell you one of the funny stories of our early growth hackings we have. If you remember on Android, there was a very early Android store. They have a section called recent apps or updates. And in order to get to the top of the list, you need to submit your app Friday midnight, basically. And then you get a very high chance to be on the top of the list. So you stay there for almost a week, like on top of the list. So we decided to do like release every week. And we stay like nights just to make this sharp deadline to deliver our app by Friday night.
So you'd hack the system.
Yeah, we hacked the system, yes. It's not possible anymore. They take this down, but that was that growth hacking tactics we have. And there are lots of things you do when you are early and you don't have money and budget to do more expensive marketing. And that's why we get our early customers, our users.
Thank you. Any more comments?
I was just going to add to what Alexis was saying earlier. We know that about 2 years ago, time spent on messaging passed time spent on social, meaning most of the social platforms are in decline and messaging is now taking off. Mark Zuckerberg even said that in 2017. He said all of the growth in Facebook is going to be in private stories and messaging. So that's where everybody is right now. And that's a good thing, I think, because social media was supposed to be about bringing people towards conversation, bringing community, and it quickly became not that, right? And what we're seeing is messaging now is where people are having conversations. And more people having conversations, like on Twitter, on Instagram, everywhere. I think one of the cool things about Kim's platform is she'll put a post out, and that's cool, it's good content, but really from a technology point of view and from what I'm doing, seeing the million people having a conversation and millions of different parts of conversations about totally random things, she is a catalyst for this entire community to talk about every aspect of their lives. And that, I think, is the future, and that's where, when we talk about user acquisition, you have to go where people are, and people are really in messaging and conversations. And if you can build products around that builds better community, that lets people talk to each other more effectively, that helps a lot of the problems that social media has brought onto the world today.
So thank you. Yeah, taking advantage of basically the conversation that actually users start amongst themselves? Yes, Alexis.
My only growth hack, some of you may know this, in 2005 when we were starting out, because Reddit is all usernames, if you saw any of the posts in the first like 4 months of Reddit, even though it looked like a bunch of different people, it was just me with different usernames. So it would look, wait.
Now he tells us.
Are you applauding for the cleverness of the hack, or okay? All right. Well, they're not fake anymore. They're mostly real now. But I will also, because of what Alex said, it just underscores a bigger point, which is the genius of what you've done, Kim. Is you and few others have actually started to get some of the value back that you've given platforms like Instagram. And the reality is there's so much that's locked in there that you and your community are responsible for, that I think it's going to be interesting to see in the next 10 years as that evolves, because that's real value. That community and being able to activate it is what is bringing so much value to these platforms that aren't doing a very good job managing it. And so I know Zuck and others are trying to find a way to evolve, but I'm longer on the people who actually have the community, because you can bring them with you to new platforms as they emerge.
So So you open up the topic of monetization, right? I mean, yes, a personality like Kim Kardashian West being on a platform obviously brings a lot of value to that platform. But then how does Kim Kardashian West and her company actually monetize? In your world, you're selling both online and offline. We have multiple models. We have premium, we have crowdfunding, where actually people say, yes, I'm going to invest in this product before the product comes out. Have you tried any of those kinds of more creative models outside selling in basically online to your customers?
I haven't. I mean, I think my model is just, different because I'm selling an actual product. So, I mean, basically just through the products that I sell is how I can profit off of social media and my direct-to-consumer business. But I think the trickier part is, like, I haven't really had to think about the users because I've just made my brand a part of my life. And so the balance is also, I don't think my fan base just wants to see things that I'm selling. They want to see that part of my world, and so they feel invested because maybe they saw on my show that I was fighting with my sister over a specific fragrance, and so now they feel really invested when the fragrance comes out. So it kind of all goes together. And then as a businesswoman, the joy that I have so much inside is when I have products that just sell when I obviously love the people that are invested in the fans, but someone that might actually not be a fan and might stumble across my product or get it as a gift, and then they genuinely love the product and become
how they discover
that way. Yeah, it makes me really happy when I hear different stories of people just really enjoying the product, maybe not even knowing that I'm attached to the product.
That's fantastic. Any other ideas on monetization? Alexis, you're the venture capitalist, so you are watching how actually entrepreneurs can monetize their ideas.
I think it's interesting. There's few platforms really get to scale unless the people who run and own those platforms deeply understand their users and know when is too much and when is it time to ask. And I think we're seeing more and more creative ways to bring money into the conversation that feels communal. A good example, like a company like Twitch, that brought tipping to a Western audience for a live stream, is a way for someone who is a streamer, and I'm not an investor, I'm buddies with Twitch guys, but no bias here. They really popularized for Western audiences this idea of, oh look, I'm entertaining you, and people will give money in real time simply for the acknowledgement within the tribe, within the community of viewers, that Fluffy Bunny 64 gave $5 to this streamer. And Fluffy Bunny 64 isn't even a government name, I hope, but it still has value and meaning, and they're willing to take hard-earned money, give it to a streamer who's there, whether they're playing video games or doing a makeup tutorial, and wanting to demonstrate that and sort of flex their kind of generosity in front of the community, and everyone is happy about it. The platform is thrilled, Twitch gets a percentage, they're happy. The streamer is happy because it's paying their bills, and they give a shout out and say, oh, thank you, Fluffy Bunny, appreciate that. And Fluffy Bunny is thrilled. And I think we're going to see more and more creative ways to monetize as new platforms emerge that let everyone win. Because, I mean, that's what at the end of the day software and the internet can do really well, is have supply meet demand. Cameo is another one that's just popped up. Again, I have no vested interest in it, but they're coming up with really creative models that we never really would have imagined even 5 or 10 years ago, because the technology evolves and people are creative. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are fundamentally two models, where you either provide your product for free and then you monetize using advertisement, or you ask your users to pay. And back like early days, advertisement was the most popular one because of Instagram and Facebook. So there was a venture capital wants to have a large scale ups with more free and monetized through the advertisement. I see last 2 years there is a fundamental change in that model, and today we see more and more successes on a subscription model. So apps like us and our competitors, and mostly in our segment, start monetizing by providing some premium features on top of the free. Although we provide lots of basic and free features, we start monetizing by providing some premium tools on top. I believe in long term it's good for end users, because when you do advertisement business, your customer is another advertisers, another company, not the user. You're thinking about them, not our users. When you do subscription business, you think about your business first, because you want to provide value. The value when users are ready to pay. So that is long term, I think, although we are asking users to pay, but they will benefit more because they will get better product.
Absolutely. I think when someone is willing to put their money where their interest is, it shows they get value, and that's exactly what I think happens with your products, Kim. I want to change the discussion now and elevate it and go into some of the headier topics like public policy. Okay? We in the tech world sometimes get a bad name because we're doing what is very fulfilling at the moment, but we are criticized that we don't have a big enough lens in understanding how our technology might affect the future. Most technologists really want no government involvement whatsoever. We want to self-monitor. We feel we're smart enough to be able to do that. But I think the last 12 months or last 24 months have shown us that that doesn't always work. So curious to get your thoughts on self-monitoring of technology companies, especially content producers like you guys have all been in the content business. How do you do that? Any ideas, Kim or Alexis? Let's start with either one of you.
Sure. I think we have seen when it works and when it doesn't. We had our own scandal in 2014. It was the reason I actually came back to lead the turnaround of Reddit, because the then CEO had defended revenge porn. That was his last act as CEO, and we swiftly removed him. And then we implemented a policy that would say, and couched in the language of privacy, that we respected the privacy of our users as well as just people of the internet, and if non-consensual pornography was posted, we would take it down. Seems like a no-brainer, but until that point, none of the social media platforms actually had a policy in place. And at the time, this was becoming a more and more rampant problem, certainly in the US and probably abroad. And states were trying to craft legislation and were trying to do things because it was a real issue. And that was one scenario where the platforms took too long, but still got their act together and now have effectively policed it, and every platform from Twitter to Google, everyone else followed suit with a similar policy, and it's effectively been halted. And so God forbid if one of those photos gets submitted there, it does get taken down promptly, immediately, and the user is banned, etc. And so I think there are instances where we see the tech community often too slow, but do a good job policing itself, or sort of good enough. But I think the reality of what we've now seen in the last few years is the effect and scale and impact that these platforms have, not just in the US, where it definitely does, but also abroad in countries with much less developed media ecosystems, is very real. And there is a responsibility that comes with that, especially when content is being shared to promote, hate or worse. And so I think this is going to be a very interesting next couple of years in the US. I do believe government has a role, absolutely, in protecting its citizens. I get worried when there aren't technologists in the room to help them craft that, because then they start making decisions that are ostensibly going to do good, but actually end up doing more harm in the long term because of unforeseen consequences. And it's the same reason if you're going to go into surgery, you want to talk to as many surgeons as you can, or doctors, before you do it. Likewise, I would love to see more technologists at the table when these things are being discussed. And I would like to see less of situations where sitting senators are asking Mark Zuckerberg, what is your business model? Because that is dumb. Like, you should have done the homework before the meeting to know what the business model of Facebook was, for instance.
No question about that. I think that was really a very sad moment for the United States Congress. Having said that, I also think that us technologists have the responsibility to educate the lawmakers and make them understand. How much time do you guys, Alex and Hovhannes, spend on actually monitoring content?
Quite a bit, actually. So, as a pretty large search engine, this happened in the first year, and we have an entire team dedicated to moderation, also editorial, because we would do searches for things like women or men, and if 1 billion people a month are searching for women on your search engine and looking for visual representation of what women are, you need to be able to represent a worldwide view. So we had an entire team come in, and we made a call as a company not to optimize for click-through rates, so more and more people clicking on things like the way the internet works. And we had a team that came in and made a very inclusive, diverse, and someone wrote about it, representation of men, women, children, of pretty much every topic that you could see in culture. And we're not doing the best job yet. I mean, we tried the best, and I think we're better than most everyone on the internet, but I think having technologists in the room is great, but we also need cultural philosophers in the room in tech companies, because we're honestly just making this up. Like when people ask, is this a good page that represents the term like happy or love? We don't know. We're just a bunch of engineers trying to figure out, this is what 100 million people will send the next hour to represent love to everyone they know. What should those images be? And that's a lot of responsibility we have. And it has to be multicultural. It has to be representative of, it can't just be a bunch of white dudes representing love to everyone, right? Like maybe in Silicon Valley, so that responsibility falls on us, and we spend a lot of time on it. So we in the very beginning, we decided not to have any adult content. We wanted to be kid safe. We wanted to be representative of culture, but honestly, it's a very hard problem because as technologists, we aren't the best people to say what is appropriate for culture, but governments aren't the best people to say that either. We don't actually have experts telling us what we should be doing.
What you're basically saying is we need more social scientists.
We do. We need academics.
More philosophers.
In technology, I think every startup should have academics, social philosophers that are part of the technology. There should be a new job called Chief Social Officer or something. That is someone and this is, all my PhD friends are like, yes, I need a job. But we need those people because we're not the best people to be making this policy.
Excellent point. Hovhannes, you live in a world where actually people get to change each other's art. So in fact, overseeing that becomes even more complicated.
Right. Right, we have a special form of creativity called remixes. It's similar to music when you take music and then you personalize it and create your own stuff on top of that, and you basically own a new form of content. So the same we do with pictures. We allow people to play with pictures, and it really like lowers the barriers for creativity, because it's much easier to start with content than with the blank page. I think blank page is the biggest killer for creativity. So we don't want that. And as you remember, we have the company started because of my daughter, and I really want to be a safe place for people like her, and not only safe but also positive. It's the whole sentiment of network should be positive and encouraging. And going back to your questions about the policy and regulations, I think what we really need is definitions. I mean, we don't want to invent our own way of thinking which is bad or good. It would be good to have, like as you said, the social people in the government maybe to really understand the social networks and help us to define what is fake news, what is bad thing, what is good thing, versus us to decide. We can do that, but sometimes we will be wrong, and if we are wrong, then people will blame us. So we don't want that. We want to have a very explicit rules, explicit definitions, and we can play with that rules.
And how often are you actually bringing down content?
Oh, we have an AI actually, which is doing like 80% of the job, taking like all the pornography and adult content, and then we have moderators which are monitoring 24/7 to make sure there is no any offensive stuff going to the public.
So Kim, on this panel, you probably are the most expert in managing the content, because you told us that you actually take a personal interest in it. You really believe that it's a reflection of you. You are the actual product, so everything you do is a reflection of you. You also told us that you actually really monitor content. Have there been close calls in your past where you kind of debated with yourself if you should post something or not? I mean, you were giving us a little example of last night, the dance party in your hotel room, but if you could share a little bit more with us.
Yeah, well, I also think that the beauty of social media is you get to also be yourself. So there hasn't really been anything that I have posted and thought about it and then deleted. I'm always pretty confident in my decision of what I'm going to post. I think that people evolve in life, and now that I'm a mom, my choices of what I would post today might not be what I would have posted 4 years ago. And I think that something that everyone has to be cautious about is that once you do post it, it's posted forever. So I mean, I definitely have been well aware of, maybe things that I would have posted before that would have been racier than what I would be comfortable posting now. But I still always know that people have phases in their lives, and if you scroll down, let's just say on Instagram, and you can see where, if I'm talking about me in particular, where I might have been at when I started Instagram to how I got extremely confident, and then I got a little bit more shy, and then I can see my moods when I look through my page, and I also think there's beauty in that too, because you can see people's evolutions. I can see my product evolutions. I can see everything down to like logo details and colors that I maybe would have used before that I wouldn't use now, because I feel like I've evolved in my taste palette, or maybe things that nobody would ever even notice, because I'm very detail oriented. But I also find beauty in all of that too, that you can look through someone's yearbook of the last however long since they've logged on to social media and see people's personalities and personality changes and growth, and there's beauty in all of that too. But there is I kind of have two different, I'm not really certain on my opinion of sometimes I feel like there's this pressure to what you should post and censor that, because I think you should be who you are and post what you want to post and not feel like there's the pressure of everyone looking. But then I switch and kind of think, okay, well, what would I want my kids to see? And I flip back to, well, there is a responsibility. So I don't have a definite answer on
No,
what
I think
feel
that's a
is
great
right
answer.
or
And actually,
wrong.
the point you made,
It's a feeling.
it's a lot of people, I think, don't realize the permanence of posting on the
Oh, I
internet.
do.
And I do think that as technologists, we need to actually bring up that education level, especially for the younger people, you know, for your daughter, for people who are so excited in the moment and want to communicate their feelings, but it might not be appropriate for them 15, 20 years later. Having said that, maybe it's fantastic to have that blog, right? You actually see how you've evolved.
I go back and forth with that, but what I think is the most important is how you all have expressed seeing comments that have taken you to a place that if you weren't a strong person, they might really affect you. And not everyone, you know, you can see a million comments and then you'll see one bad comment and it can ruin your day. So I think it's also letting people express themselves the way that they want to, maybe an expression of photos, but it's teaching people. I mean, the one thing that I try to teach my kids, and it's my most important thing, is just to be kind. And I would never allow someone that I know to speak negatively about someone and leave a nasty comment. So it's also just, I mean, goes back to comment control and figuring out how to not let that negativity in your lives, because there are people and really delicate souls that aren't as strong as some people that can handle that. And it's just so unnecessary. It really is.
Yeah, and especially in the, very good, in the formative years of young people who feel that their net worth is actually derived from the number of likes or the comments. I think that is, again, something that us as technologists can really help educate and maybe even monitor. I'm going to now switch to a totally different kind of conversation, and I'd love, in rapid, you know, whatever way you want to respond, but, you know, fairly rapidly, let's start with advice to your younger self. Since we're on the topic of your younger self, it's a question that I get asked very often, and sometimes it kind of stops me in my own seat. But if you could give advice to your younger self, Alexis, what would it be?
Keep programming. I mean, I was programming in high school and college, but I would have done even more, and I loved my history degree, and I'm grateful for it. My business degree I could have done without, and I definitely would have studied computer science instead. And it's the biggest thing. I went to 82 universities after my book came out so that I could go and tell every college student I could that learning to code was the new literacy, and it is the modern superpower, and all of the best tutorials are freely available online, and there has never been a thing this valuable that's also so free to learn. So please, 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 especially because Armenia is going to be such a natural place for tech to continue to thrive, please, if you know a little kid, get them to code. Send her to Tumo, please. We already got the foundation here with chess, right? The K through 12 chess, like it's in our blood, right? That is such a great foundation for learning to program. But that would be the number one advice I'd give myself.
And I want to add to that. I want to say that if you're studying computer science, if you're studying electrical engineering or any other kind of engineering, I believe the most important thing is to stay in the program. Do not quit. Do not feel like if you got a C, you should not be in there because you don't have the chops. I think getting those degrees, understanding that the world is really being defined by technology, hanging in there, it's totally okay to get a C-, but graduate.
And once you graduate, like I went to engineering school. Once you graduate, then you can find out that you actually don't want to do engineering and then pay for your own art school. And then
Is that what happened, Alex?
I paid my way through art school because it's really expensive to go to art school. But after post-engineering school, engineering is hard, but it's really gratifying.
No question, it's hard.
But it is super gratifying. I mean, I use engineering every day in some way. People don't really realize that graphic design and designing they're all just solving the same problems. It's actually the same thing if you've done both of them. You're just taking a problem and solving it. And anyone who's doing that in business or engineering, the medium is just different. Musicians do that, mathematicians do that, and it's just a way of thinking, so it's more just being educated. To answer your question on what I would tell myself, I tell myself all the time lots of things. But
this is your younger self.
Yeah, I told myself, my younger self, you shouldn't have done that. But the number one thing I learned was, it's just going to be okay. I feel like, especially youth right now, I have a niece and I have a lot of young friends, and they're so stressed out because of the world, and there's so much pressure from social media. Not only do you have to be popular in your high school, you have to be popular in every high school because all of them are connected by Instagram. And so everyone is so stressed and has so much anxiety. Are they going to have a job? Politics, the world, climate change. It'll be okay. Like, we had the same problems when I was growing up. It'll be fine, you know, like just every day. And as long as you know that it's going to be fine, then you have some hope that you can be a part of the change and make a difference. I really wouldn't want people to give up and not see that there's hope in the future. The future is going to be crazy, and I hope I'm around to see it.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you don't need to be Mark Zuckerberg. You do not have to define success for yourself by a certain age. In fact, most people have amazing careers and they find their stride after 40, 50, 60 and keep going. So do not give yourself a timeline and make yourself feel like a failure because you have just turned 30 or 35 and feel like you didn't achieve the success. Keep going because life is a long marathon.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say I strongly support Alexis on his statement. I think having coding skills is super important. I code my first products and first couple of startups. I was the main developer and engineer for the company. And I know in this room there are many startups, entrepreneurs there, or to-be entrepreneurs. And I believe coding skills will be super important for you guys. Because it's hard to find good engineers anyway, and it's going very expensive either. So if you want to lower the barrier to entry and create your minimal viable product, like a small product, I think you should probably learn coding, or at least you should understand how to do that to hire the best engineers. Talking about myself is also kind of similar to Alex. I would say take it easy. When you are starting, when I was starting my first company, I didn't realize how much stress would be down the road, but you should enjoy the journey. You should enjoy the journey, and you should enjoy even more than the outcome, because you are going to have lots of stress. And stress, you should take it easy, because even if it's the worst day in your life, you think like this, you know, like it's the end of your startup, you are just closing the door. There will be another day, and then you can regain and you can have another success.
Very good. And Kim?
Yeah, I don't really live my life, when talking to my younger self, I don't really live my life with regrets. I think we all do stupid things when we're young, but I think I just echo the sentiment of everybody else, is just, we're all gonna make mistakes, so just don't be hard on yourself. And how we were talking earlier about winging it in life. You know, I'm 38. I started law school at 37. It's really never too late to do what you want to do, and you can do anything that you really want to do. So, like, have fun in those mistakes that you're making. Make sure that they're worth it, and have fun in life, and wing it a little bit.
Wing it is the lesson. Fantastic lesson. Okay, so next I'm going to ask a question that I was asked when I spoke at the Commonwealth Club. And maybe it's my most favorite question of all of my speaking engagements. And that is, if you could come up with just one idea to change the world, just one idea, and it can be completely fantastic, meaning fantasy. It doesn't have to be based in reality. What would it be? And before I ask my panel, I'll tell you what I said. I was just asked this and I was given 30 seconds to come up with something, or 30 seconds to give my answer. And I thought, and I said, the one idea that I think would really change the world was if men could get pregnant and nurse babies. If that could happen, the world would be a very different place. So with that, I'd love to hear what you all think. The one idea, and it can be total blue sky, it doesn't have to be based in reality, that, that you would like to change the world.
Wow.
Well, mine, if something just comes off the top of my head, I mean, mine was thinking more of US, because we have the worst prison system in the world. So if I could get rid of most of prisons, if I'm just talking about WISH, and have rehab centers and mental health institutions that would house people that really need it, I think that would change a lot in the US.
Thank you for saying that. And you know, I do believe it would change it all over the world, because what happens when you come out of prison? You basically have been in an environment that hasn't prepared you for life after prison. So thank you for your work, Kim, and thank you for saying that.
As a technologist, my dream also technology related. So I wish the visual storytelling became as natural as writing, and even be like connected to your brain. So the way you visualize in your brain, you can easily create an image and show to the world. Because you have a lot of things here, and ability to convert this to the visual story will be the best things you can have in your life, I guess.
But when I feel love towards my mom, actually, I can actually project the GIF, and my mom can see it, and she knows exactly what I feel for her. Thank you.
Oh, wow, that's like a very deep and question that has a lot of responsibility to it.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
You can sit it out if you want.
No, like this is like, you can't sit this one out. Like, you have to be a part of the solution, right? So for me, you know, if you're gonna give me that, it has to be about poverty, right? And it has to be about freedom of people. And I think if it's not actually, I don't actually think technology is going to solve any of that. What's going to solve it is a financial system that's not capitalism. It's going to be a social system that's not built around how we idolize some of the institutions that we have now. We need a new form of government that is a global government that's going to allow technology and other things to happen, but without oppressing people around the world. You know, half the people in the world aren't going to be watching this because they don't have access to the internet. So how do we bring all of those people back into what we're doing here? And I think the change is not going to come from the technologists. It's going to come from governments. So the invention that I would invent is a new type of government, if I could. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That was a heavy question, sorry.
Jeez. Okay, well, the one that my mind went to is not as big as I hoped it would be, but I think all of my success as an entrepreneur, an investor, friend, husband, son, all of those things, I mean, there have been plenty of failures too, but when it has worked has been because of an understanding of a empathy. And if I could truly feel, if anyone could truly feel how another person feels, maybe this solves the male misunderstanding around pregnancy and all of that responsibility and pressure and awesomeness that it confers on a woman who is pregnant. But maybe it also helps us better understand the people whose lives are ruined by our broken prison system, the people who truly know fear and pain and helplessness because they are left out of the economic system. Maybe that helps us better understand one another if we can really, really deeply, just magically empathize and literally feel someone's pain when they're hurt. I know, all the times that I have screwed up have usually stemmed from not understanding that, whether that's been with my wife or whether that's been with a company. And those are also the areas where I've learned the most, in part because I hurt from knowing that pain of not understanding. And when I got close to feeling what they felt, is where I found the most growth myself. Just like when I'm at the gym and I'm pushing some extra weight and it hurts a little, that is where growth comes from that pain.
Thank you very much, all of you, because these are really heady questions, and I appreciate you hanging in there and answering. We have about 2 minutes left, so very little time. This has been a very fun session. So before we leave each other, what I would love to hear from you is back to the entrepreneur, back to doing business, and the one business that you wish you could have done out there, the one that got away. You know, sometimes you look at a company and say, gosh, that's such a great idea. Or you look at a product and say, gosh, that's such a great idea. I wish I had done it. In real rapid succession, because we don't have much time. Who's going to jump in first?
I mean, there's so many, right? Like inventing a computer, everything. I don't know. Instagram. There's so many. One of their companies. I wish I thought of it.
Kim, you're very, very politically correct. Very good answer. Hovhannes.
When I watched Steve Jobs introducing iPhone, I was thinking, wow, this thing is going to change the world. And that, it really does. And this is probably the biggest invention which happened during my lifetime, which changed the life of so many people. I wish I was that guy, but.
Thank you. Alex.
This is going to sound a little weird, but I think the greatest invention that I wish I could have done is the postal service. Before the internet, for thousands of years, people have been able to communicate globally through this decentralized network that could withstand wars and famine. And you can take a piece of paper and deliver it to anyone in the world within a few days. And all the governments are backing this. This is like a very public good. The United States backs it with government money. The entire postal service is, I think, still by far the most interesting network of communication ever built. I think it'll probably outlast the internet. So if I could have worked on that, that would have been great. Postmaster.
Alex, I think you surprised all of us. And Alexis.
There is a laundry list of companies I wish I had invested in that I missed. The thing that I got to live a little vicariously through, thanks to social media and all of you, was the revolution. And I know it's not a company, but damn, edge of my seat, excited and so proud and so amazed. And I wish I could say that I actually had a role in it. I had none aside from a few retweets, but that is it.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for being such an amazing audience. I want to also thank all my panelists. It's not every day that you get to sit on a panel with someone who has 250 million followers. So thank you for agreeing to be part of this panel. And Kim, specifically for you, thank you for making the trip all the way out to Armenia to be part of this. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Go, let's hear it. One more time, just raise the roof, please. cheer, please, for Kim Kardashian West.